Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Recently, one of our fans, William, asked me a very interesting question. What would have happened had the Jedi Council found out about Anakin and Padme's wedding? What would have been their reaction? Well, I thought about it, and it really does depend on the individual Jedi Master. I mean, you got guys like Plo Koon, who is constantly angry because oxygen is poisonous to him. He probably also hates weddings and is glad Anakin didn't invite him. I'm sure Yoda is a complete pimp and doesn't believe in the sanctity of marriage and would have went to the wedding for all the emotional ladies he could have easily force persuaded to the green side. And yes, I think the sexual harassment accusations against Yoda were troubling, but it's not really up to the public or the media to judge whether he's guilty or not. That's why they have a Jedi Council hearing, right? You shouldn't support him or be against him just because your Force views match with his. As important as you might think your own Force view ideology is, it shouldn't come before basic human decency, morality, and rule of law. All these freaking Force extremists are destroying our country, the galaxy. Anyway, then you have Ki-Adi-Mundi, who I bet was a little bit sad when he wasn't invited because, he's all old and his head looks like a potato, and he's always getting sent to terrible places like Megiddo. Well, that's it, guys. Thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, I'm just joking. We will do this video. What would the Jedi Council actually do if they encountered someone like Anakin Skywalker who wanted to get married and still stay as a Jedi Knight? Well, the official Jedi Code is very vague, general, and only has about 5 lines, which is kind of crazy for a founding document for such an important organization. Just look at how much trouble we have interpreting the Constitution or religious texts, and those are much more detailed than 5 lines. Anyway, there are some secondary tenets that go along with this Jedi Code, and they are a bit more specific. One of them forbids attachments, which could mean marriage along with romantic bonds, families, and other things. Now, because we don't have the exact text or Darth Cage to help us steal the text so we can read it, we'll just have to assume that romantic relationships aren't specifically mentioned but hinted towards. Kind of like how you don't need your wife to tell you that pants have to be worn in the common areas of the house. You kind of just know. Now, the Jedi Code had a bunch of other strict rules, like how many Padawan a master could have.
I take Anakin as my Padawan learner. The code forbids it.
Or not killing an unarmed combatant. Count Dooku did get out of hand and become detached from what was right and wrong, and in a way he almost decapitated the Republic's ability to govern, which would have cut off the rest of the galaxy from the capable governing arms of the Republic. But what Anakin did was still far removed from proper Jedi behavior. And despite the fact that thou shalt not kill an unarmed combatant is written in the Jedi Code, it wasn't like the Council did anything about it when Anakin broke that rule. So their enforcement of the Jedi Code really did vary. Also, the side tenets in the Jedi Code were subject to change from one period to another. Only the central Jedi Code seemed to stay intact. So the side tenets are more like amendments rather than articles in the Constitution. But let's look at why the Jedi Order would ban something like marriage. After all, it's considered one of the cornerstones of society, right? It might not always be perfect and could potentially end in a violent homicide, but a stable marriage, statistically speaking, is usually beneficial when it comes to raising kids. You have 2 incomes, 2 people to love, and shower a baby with affection. It's all about redundant systems, right? Obviously, that's not to say single parents aren't awesome and their kids can be successful. Our former president was raised by a single mother, and he's doing pretty well for himself. There was the whole Red Line in Syria thing where Putin, who did have 2 parents, got one over our president. But Putin is a complete nutjob. So I guess it's inconclusive which is better. The point is, marriage at the most basic form is a social construct. It's an idea created by most civilizations to encourage civilians to form a family unit that is most beneficial for society, economically, and socially. Sure, some people associate certain deeper spiritual and religious meanings when they get married, but it's not the case for everyone. But what is the case for everyone is after getting married, you've now put an official label on your relationship. And once you have obtained this official label, now society can pressure you not to lose that label. The negative connotation surrounding divorce is just another social construct designed to keep the family unit intact so that there's a safe and loving place for babies to hang out until they can go out on their own to hunt and kill for food and repeat the whole mating process over again. So if you think about it, marriage doesn't necessarily have to include emotions or feelings. It can have it, but it's not necessary. Following your passion and emotions is still a luxury in certain parts of the world and for certain cultures. In 2009, an estimated 60% of all marriages in the world were still arranged. In India, that number was closer to 90%. And in some other places, marriages were even forced. Like in Kyrgyzstan, where normal wedding emotions like love and happiness are replaced with fear and loathing. And if I look at my own marriage, it's not like I had a sudden spike of affection for my girlfriend after the ceremony. Our relationship had been growing for years, and like all relationships or true love, it takes time and shared experience. Now, for some people, over time, that emotional growth can be negative and lead to terrible things, but for some, it can be positive, which leads to amazing things. A marriage doesn't necessarily give you any bonus XP points or new character abilities. It's more like a milestone, kind of like an Xbox achievement. So the real problem the Jedi Order has is not with marriage, but the emotional attachment that can come along with a marriage. The Jedi believe that attachments to an individual or anything can force a Jedi into a bad situation where he has to choose between his own attachments and the greater good of the universe. It's not all that new of a concept, it's something that a lot of Eastern religions practice. Obviously, with the Jedi, the stakes are much higher because they have immense amounts of power. And as we all know, with great power comes great temptations.
I've got so much honey.
And that can corrupt individuals very quickly, leading to a very sticky situation. So our next question is, if marriage shouldn't be a big deal for the Jedi, then what about sex? Well, from what we know, there were certain periods in the Jedi Order's history where the Jedi were forced to be celibate. But as far as we know, that wasn't in practice during the period when Anakin was a Jedi. So what about canon? Well, we do know that families were banned, because obviously there's no greater bond than one between a father or a mother and their children. In Legends, having children was also banned during certain periods of time, because of the fear of nepotism and the creation of Jedi family clans. Also, if you think about it, the children of Force-sensitive individuals can be Force-sensitive themselves and will need to be trained at the Jedi Temple, where they can't really be isolated from their parents, which is a crucial part of Jedi training. That's because a child's love for their parents is also an emotional attachment. Now, it is possible for the Jedi to use protection when they're sticking their lightsabers into random people. I'm also pretty sure that constant space travel in ships clearly designed without radiation protection has made most of the Jedi impotent. There's also this thing that Anakin and Obi-Wan flew through.
Anakin, how many times I told you?
Yeah, that can't be good for you. Anyway, can sexual intercourse without producing an offspring still be bad in the eyes of the Jedi Council? For instance, if Obi-Wan Kenobi is deep undercover as a young writer looking for inspiration in a cabaret, he might need to sleep with the gorgeous Nicole Kidman in order not to blow his cover. Now, as attractive and stunning as Nicole Kidman is, the true question is, can she love someone else the same way that she loves herself? So in this case where Obi-Wan Kenobi does go undercover, sticks his lightsaber in Nicole Kidman in what can only be described as a loveless encounter, so in this situation, Obi-Wan Kenobi has had an intimate relationship that did not produce an offspring. How will the Jedi Council react? Well, it's purely based on if Obi-Wan Kenobi has become attached. It's also based on if the Jedi Council has a heart, hashtag Obi-Wan and Satine forever, hashtag tuberculosis. Generally speaking, humans are biologically built to become attached after sexual intercourse. That's because the body releases all sorts of chemicals and hormones during intimate moments and physical contact, like dopamine, oxytocin, and vasopressin. It's actually not all that different from a high one might experience when they're using drugs. So a lot of the times, especially for inexperienced lovers, they aren't able to distinguish the difference between an addiction or attachment to this biological high and true love. In real life, true love doesn't happen in a split second. It takes time. There's no such thing as love at first sight like we see in the movies. I mean, that's just hormones and chemicals going off in your body. There's no purchasable loot crate that you can just buy to fill up your relationship progress bar. You kind of have to just grind for it. It's probably why on a practical level most religions practice abstinence until after marriage. It's the whole idea that you get to know someone and maybe even fall in love with them before you get addicted to the wonderful chemical high of intimacy. That's why when you have sex for the first time and you experience all these great hormones and chemicals, it'll be with someone you hopefully actually like and can get along with, even if sex was removed from the equation. Now, on the flip side, some individuals forced to practice abstinence because of religious beliefs or whatever will rush to get married in order to have sex, which then locks them into a long-term contract with someone who gives them questionable benefits and potentially a very expensive cancellation fee. So it's not always great. The point is, sexual contact and emotional attachment are linked together and can confuse the hell out of people. Now, obviously, there are some people who are able to realize that and they're able to have sex without emotional attachment. Sociopaths can also do that and would actually do well in the Jedi Order, or at least appear to do well. Oh, whoops, did I let those hostages die in that explosion? Well, it wasn't that I didn't care about them, it's just that I care about everyone so equally I couldn't be bothered to show them any favoritism by saving them. That's basically what Count Dooku was like when he was in the Jedi. He was a sociopath. Now, the part of the brain that processes sexual desire is separate from the one that processes emotional desire. These two areas do overlap, but it's possible to distinguish the difference between the two feelings. But even if a Jedi doesn't become emotionally attached, doesn't have offspring, he can still be addicted to sexual intercourse. Well, actually, I don't know if addicted is the right term, because that excuses scumbags like Carlos Danger. So yeah, there are individuals who lack self-control when pursuing their sexual desires, and that can lead to them endangering themselves and their sexual partners. And of course, this will be an attachment that will make it very difficult for a Jedi to carry out their duties, especially because they have that forced persuasion technique, which is highly unethical if you think about it. It's basically like Bill Cosby, but instead of using pills, they're using magical powers. So let's look at Anakin and Padme's relationship. They are married, but like we said before, it's not a huge deal. It's more of a social construct or a label. But are they attached to one another? Well, I would certainly say that Anakin is attached to Padme. After all, Anakin chops off Mace Windu's arm and then murders several children and then betrays the Republic and Jedi, all for the slim chance that Palpatine has the key to saving Padme from certain death. Now, were I in Anakin's shoes, I'd probably do the same thing as him, but I'm just a dude, not some Jedi. A super being who has devoted himself to protecting the galaxy. The emotional attachment he has made him put his own interest before the rest of the galaxy. So that is a problem. Also, Padme and Anakin's relationship has created an offspring. Well, offsprings. So this further complicates things and creates more emotional bonds. Now, if I were a member of the Jedi Council, I would have problems with Anakin and Padme's relationship. One, Anakin's emotional attachments to Padme are way too strong, and two, they are going to have kids, and I can see that causing even more problems down the road for a Jedi Knight. Now, how the rest of the Jedi Order acts, well, it really depends. There is a precedent, not many cases, but a few. And I'm sure each individual Jedi Master in the Council would have different opinions. Individuals like Yoda and Mace Windu were more strict adherents to the Code, while some other Jedi were a bit more relaxed on certain issues. For instance, Ki-Adi-Mundi, the Jedi Master most likely to be buried up to his head in fertile soil, actually had 5 to 6 wives and several kids in Legends. You see, his race, the Saurian, had a completely unbalanced number of females to males, greatly favoring females 20 to 1. Saurian males also had a much shorter lifespan, which meant it was their duty to bone as many Saurian females as possible for the survival of their entire species. Now, a lot of you guys are probably thinking, wow, I would love to be a Saurian male, right? Well, no. Actually, the women also look like potatoes. It's really terrible. Very, very starchy. So, Ki-Adi-Mundi actually did have some difficulties trying to stay not emotionally attached to his family, and he encountered even greater difficulty when his entire family was wiped out during a separatist attack. But ultimately, he had the discipline and brain power, because he had 2 brains, to focus on his Jedi duties and didn't go to the dark side. He's a living example that Jedi are capable of having families and not becoming too emotionally attached. A Jedi Master on the Council like Mundi would probably assess each relationship by itself. If a Jedi who is trying to have a relationship is cool, calm, and collected like he is, I don't think he would have any problem with them carrying on that relationship. He might even offer to mentor them or give them advice because he's such a lonely potato, now that all of his little potato heads have gone to the great deep fryer in the sky. But someone like Anakin, with all of his rage, emotions, and impatience, would definitely be problematic. Now, I'm pretty sure most of the Jedi Council, knowing Anakin for the sick little puppy that he is, would have problems with his relationship with Padme. But exactly what they will do to him is not so clear. There's also precedent in this case, not only with Master Mundi. During the Old Republic era, the Jedi turned Sith turned Jedi, Revan, revealed his relationship with fellow Jedi Bastila Shan. Now, Revan was a great Jedi and therefore a heretic in the eyes of the Jedi Order, but they couldn't really ban him from the Order because he was a war hero. So they kind of just had him agree not to spread his teachings, and they let him stay in the Jedi Council. With Anakin, you might have similar political problems. He was a favorite of the Chancellor of the Republic, and since they were in the middle of the Clone Wars and Anakin was also a decorated war hero, it would have been a really bad PR move for them to kick Anakin out of the Order. Not only would Palpatine be against such a move, but it would also make the public view the Jedi Order as an extreme and harsh organization for kicking out one of its best soldiers because he decided to fall in love.
You can't accept love?
Now, I think the Jedi Council would allow Anakin to stay. He would obviously have to keep his relationship still secret so it doesn't affect the other members of the Order, and they most likely will have to demote him from a combat position because now his judgment is under question. Nonetheless, it wouldn't go well for him, and let's be honest, the only reason that Anakin and Padme were able to live this secret life was because they rarely even saw each other. For most of their marriage, they were both way too busy running around and saving the galaxy. How long do you think that would have lasted? If the war ended, they would be forced to both be on Coruscant, and it'd be pretty tough to not see each other every day. Eventually, Anakin would just have to disobey the Jedi or leave the Order. So guys, those are my thoughts on the Jedi Council's views on love, romance, offspring, marriage, all that other great stuff. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think. Also, don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. And as usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.